Great. So once again, hi everyone. Welcome to the Foreman community demo. I'm Nafar, an active developer within the Foreman project, and I'll be hosting the demo today. And as usual, we have some updates to share with you, some topics we want to hear opinions about, and some new things we've been working on to share. Before we get started, this demo is all about sharing the latest updates and answering your questions. So we want everyone to participate. Feel free to ask away. Drop your questions or comments in the IRC at the Foreman or use YouTube's live chat. We are tuned into both channels, so don't hesitate to speak up. Okay, let's have a quick look at the agenda for today's demo. We have some updates from the community, and we have 3 topics from the Catella group to share. Okay, let's start with the community updates, but before I want to make sure YouTube is streaming great, yeah, without any interruptions. Okay, so community updates. The first one is about the community monitoring rotation. For those who are not familiar with it, we are starting a new initiative where a designated person from each team will be assigned each week to ensure users receive timely support and answers to their questions. We are starting it officially next week, and we hope this will help our users to improve our community collaboration. Next one. Next week, we are organizing a deep dive session on Pixie provisioning, and we will stream it live on YouTube, so you're all welcome to join. This session will be led by Shim Stein, an experienced developer from the Foreman team. Last one. Let's move on to the last announcement, which is about the second release candidate of Foreman 3.8, which is now out. And we are at the end of the testing phase, so this is your last opportunity to test it. What else? There is a community post with installation and upgrade instructions, so you can test it and provide real value to the project. Let me see if I can share it with you. Yep. Okay, I will show it later. I just want to mention that we are introducing a new navigation menu design. We discussed it before, but don't be surprised if you'll see a new design, and we hope you enjoy it. And as you all know, after RC1 and RC2, as usual, we are releasing the official Foreman 3.8 GA version, which is planned by the end of next week. And yeah, this is our next topic. Let me share the community post with you. I think it will be easier to understand. So okay, great, it should be visible now. This is the post I mentioned with the installation instructions. And while we're on it, there is also a post which is all about your feedback about the release candidate. Okay, moving on to our next topic. In this topic, I'd like to draw your attention to a recent post in our community that is proposing to consolidate our chat platforms. This post highlights an issue we've been facing on that our IRC channels and metric rooms are no longer bridged. This has resulted in 2 separate chat spaces, and unfortunately, restoring the bridging is not possible. So to keep our community united and accessible for future users who might not be a part of either IRC or metrics, we are considering consolidating these chat spaces into one platform. Let me scroll down a little bit. So you can see our poll. So we understand that opinions on this matter may vary, and for that we have launched a preference survey which will be open until October 18th. And we encourage everyone to participate in the poll. We want to make this decision collectively, keeping the best interest of our community in mind. Yeah, that's it from me, from the community. Guess we can move on to our next topic, which is a demo. So, let's see. Okay, yeah. Next one is from Quinn, container registry name patterns. So Quinn, whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you, Nafar. Let me get the screen share working. I apologize if there's any background noise. They're doing construction outside. Not much I could do about that. All right. Okay, hello everyone. I am Quinn. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about how we choose the names for our containers when we're promoting content views and composite content views. I recently took a card on this, and I thought it was a pretty interesting. There's a pretty interesting way in which we come up with both the pattern names and the default names. So just first, I'd like to start with a little overview on that. So here is a lifecycle environment. I just created one for, a demo environment for this. Down at the bottom, we have a registry name pattern, and there's a little box there that gives a description of, more or less what this does. But when you're promoting a composite content view, you can put any string in this box, and it will rename based on a bunch of different variables that you can throw in. We had a couple examples, such as this one uses the organization label and the upstream name separated by any characters that you want. In this case, uses a slash. This one has a couple more properties with dashes. The important thing is that these generated names must be unique. So if you have like a really terrible pattern in there, just like a constant string, or say you just use, I don't know, the content view name. If you put in more than one repository that shares, in this case, the content view, you're going to have overlap, and it will reject the promotion. So a lot of users really like these registry name patterns, but there is a little bit at the bottom there that talks about default names. And it's not really clear how these default names are generated, so I'd like to go into that a little bit today. So there's a few different factors when you're generating these default names and other names. So first of all, you look at the environment pattern. So if the lifecycle environment that it's coming from has a registry name pattern, you can use that. Also the promotion pattern. If the repository is being promoted to a lifecycle environment with a pattern set, it can use that. Saying neither of those are set, there's two other things that really come into play. If the repository is archived, and this sometimes happens with composite content views, there will be no lifecycle environment, which is the important part. And then if the repository is part of a default content view. And this more or less comes down to like 4 different Booleans here. And so there are a few different combinations of things that can transpire here. I made a little chart to show, what name we end up going with. The grayed out sections can't ever happen, but outside of that, more or less, if the promotion pattern is set, we follow the promotion pattern. If there's no promotion pattern and there's an environment pattern, we follow the environment pattern. That's the blue and purple. And then outside of that, we have a couple defaults that we use. If it's part of a default content view, we do org label dash product label dash repository label. If it's not, we try to use org label, environment label, content view label, product label, repository label. But the issue with that is if the repository is archived, there is no environment. So instead we do org label, content view label, CVV label, product label, repository label. The recent bug fix that I have a PR out on right now dealt with a little, like a tiny little edge case that would pop up sometimes. But I thought it was worth sharing because there is a change in how we're doing, how we're naming these containers once they're created. And that is for these two rows. If the repository is archived, there isn't an environment set. However, because we're following the pattern, it's possible that people can use that environment properties in the name of the container that they're trying to create, like the environment label or something, which was catastrophic and it caused issues with promotion before. So the one thing I'd like to touch on here is that these two scenarios have been changed. So if you're using a composite content view and it's archived, it will now be ignoring the patterns for both the lifecycle environment that it's coming from and the lifecycle environment that it's going to. And we're just going to default to, well, I guess the default label for if the repository is archived. That is more or less it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Quinn. And I don't see any questions, so I guess we can move on to our next topic, but feel free to ask later. Okay, next up is Ian with calculate content counts on smart proxy sync.
Hey, thanks, Nafar. And also, Quinn, thanks for that presentation before. Seeing that chart is definitely pretty helpful. So I'm going to get my screen shared. And actually, I just wanted to add a tiny bit more context to Quinn's presentation. Quinn was talking about archived repositories, and it's a bit of a technical term that we use for the repositories that don't get distributed, really, unless you have the special setting on that distributes kind of these debug ones. If you have a yum repository, it's the ones that have maybe like a 3.0 in them or like a 2.0. We call these archived. And so the fix that he made would only affect those archived ones. And I discovered that they're not actually shown for container repositories if you do like a podman search, but you will be able to actually pull content from them if you're trying to debug something. So just keep that in mind. Okay, anyway, on to my topic. So we have a new feature, or it's kind of a return of an old feature. And this has to do with content counts on your smart proxies. So a lot of users really want to make sure that the content on their smart proxies match the content on their main Catello server. This is important if you're trying to keep track of any sync failures, perhaps, or if you just want to know if there's a bug going on. So the feature that we're introducing will allow you to actually see this true count, and we're caching this in our database straight from pulp. That is the pulp on your smart proxy. So let me kind of start from the bottom up. We've added some API calls that you can use. You can see them in my terminal here. So there's a couple things. Firstly, you can send a request to update the content counts. What that'll do is it'll send API calls out to pulp for all the repositories that belong on that smart proxy. And it'll query the repositories, grab the counts of content. It doesn't grab the content itself. We're just looking at the count. We actually kind of do a pagination hack where we say return nothing, only return the count to keep things a bit more efficient. Well, yeah, I won't run the update, but I will show you what it looks like when you call the count. But let me show you. If you do want to update it, it's going to be a post to this Catello API capsules and then your ID, content counts. You don't have to send any data. It's just a post to this, or sorry, not counts, update counts. This is the endpoint. So once you send a post to update counts, it'll update it. It'll trigger an asynchronous task. So you'll see the task returned in the JSON. And then once that task is finished, you can actually look for the count. Now, we also trigger this automatically after you do a smart proxy sync. But anyway, let's take a look at what these content counts look like. So this isn't a perfect representation of what it will look like in the end. This is still in development. But here's the general overview. So you'll have a big JSON blob here. You'll have a key for your content view versions. And you'll have IDs here, like my content view version with ID 6. And there you'll see the repositories, and then it's by ID. And so my repository with ID 19, this was a Yum repo. You can see it has an RPM count, has a count of errata. And then we include some things that, now this is a development version, so some of these should be translated better. When I say translated, you can see some of these are like rpm.repo metadata file. That is what Pulp calls these, but we have to translate them into Catello terms. So for example, in Pulp, an erratum, we call erratum here, would be rpm.advisory. So the ones that we are aiming to have translated are the items that we actually index into Catello. For example, like package environments. We don't index those into our Catello database. We need to make sure we copy them, but we don't index them. And so we can see some other examples of repositories. Oh, and one thing, there's a piece of data here that we were using, which was an aggregated count of all of the content for a content view version. We are no longer going to have this because it was deemed unnecessary. With the way we had it, you can just add up everything that's actually in here. So scrolling down, we have some other repo types. You can see we have some Docker content. We have some file content. We have some Debian content. Let's see, Ansible, Python, OS tree. I think every content type was shown there. But how will this translate in the UI? Well, we have a very early version of the UI in development. This is not even merged yet. But I can just give you a preview of this. So when you go to your smart proxy, you'll go to the nice content tab. And what you can do now is you can click on the environments. So you'll have your different environments. Mine are called evaporation and precipitation. And if you look inside, you'll see your repositories. And now you can drop down. You'll see the repos and you'll see the content counts. So you can see, for example, that there are some packages. You can see for my BusyBox repo, there's some tags and some manifests. And then you can see your counts in here. And you'll be able to expand all of these, and you can take a look. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the feature. I'll just say, again, the UI is likely to change, but the idea will be the same. So, yeah, if there are any questions about that, I'm happy to field them. And also, Samir is here too. He has been working heavily on this as well. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Ian. So no questions so far. Next up is Samir. Maybe we'll have more questions after his presentation. So Samir, whenever you're ready, your topic is updates on RedHat repo page and sync plans.
Awesome. All right, thanks, Nofar. So let me get started here. So the first update I have is on the RedHat repositories page. So if you can see, I have 2 enabled repositories here, and this button here is to disable the repository, so it will no longer be available in your organization. However, the other one that you see here is disabled, the button itself. what we were seeing is, okay, so let me back up here. So if you go to the actual repository that is created when you enable the Red Hat repo, if you wanted to disable it, you'd have to go through this flow because that repository is probably in a published version. That's why the disable option has been turned off. So when you actually want to delete that repository, you have to go through the product repositories page so that you can look at all the content view versions that will be affected once you disable that repository. So what we have done is actually disabled the button to disable the repository. And we have an info section redirecting users to the product repositories page and not disabling it directly from the screen. That also bleeds into my next topic, which is around sync plans. So with sync plans, you have the option to add products, but one consideration there is you should not be allowed to add disabled products to a sync plan. So we have made a few changes to this sync plans page, basically. I can show it better on the Hammer UI. So if I were to try to set a sync plan ID on a disabled product, so here I have product 291, which is disabled. So if I were to add it, it should no longer allow me to add it. It will throw a validation error and tell you that the disabled product cannot be added. So what this was doing is, if for some reason your disabling were to fail, and it would generally fail if it was a repository in a published content view version, or there could be other reasons why the disabling of a product or repository fails, and somehow it doesn't get removed from the sync plan, your sync plans would start failing on that disabled product, which we do not want. So now we have a validation before you add it to the sync plan. And there's also a change which I cannot necessarily demo because I don't have that data on my system. But what we do now is when you do some operations like add or remove products to a sync plan, we have a method which now validates all of the products, existing products on the sync plan. So if I were to have a disabled product somehow, which is still on the sync plan, it would go ahead, validate that and remove that for you. So the next time the sync plan runs, the sync plan will be corrected and it will run through successfully. And yeah, that's about all I had to share.
Thank you, Samir. This was our last topic for today. And I don't see any questions. So, yeah, let's conclude this demo by saying that thanks everyone for participating. The next demo is on October 19th. And if there are more questions, you can always reach out to us. Regarding the next demo, I won't be here, so we are looking for volunteers to host this demo. And the demo will also won't be streamed live on YouTube, but we will upload the recording of the demo right after it's done. So thank you everyone again, and see you next time.